content. This is Burn It Down with Kim Brown. We do this every Tuesday and Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Give us a like, subscribe, and support the channel in the ways that you can. Follow us around the internet, BIDWKB. And speaking of Cop Mala, the presumed Democratic presidential nominee, I wonder what Cop Mala has to say about Sonya Massey. Sonya Massey is the latest Black person, or one of the latest Black people, to be murdered in this country whilst unarmed, to be murdered in this country by the police, and to be murdered in her own home. And when I saw this story, it absolutely broke my heart. Sonya Massey, 36 years old, in Springfield, Illinois. I believe it was the evening of July 6th. Have you guys already seen the video? I'm certain you have. If you haven't, have a strong stomach. It is very disturbing. And to be clear, I'm not going to play the video. I do have a package from a local news station out of Springfield, Illinois. The long and the short of it is this: Deputy Sean Grayson, along with an unnamed officer and another deputy who has not been named, came to Sonya's home in the wee hours, I believe, of July 6th. Was this July 6th? I hope I have the date right, but it was this month of July, 2024. Sonya called the cops because she suspected a prowler. And the body cam video has been released, and it shows that when the officers arrived to her home, there was damage to her vehicle. Her passenger side window appeared to be broken, splintered, right? So Sonya's call to the police reporting a potential prowler seems grounded. Yet when the police arrived to her home, they were very, well, at least Officer Grayson, the one who ended up shooting her, was very curt, very disrespectful, very condescending, very intimidating in the way that he spoke with her. We're about to see this package, but just some context here. This officer was 6'5", 260 pounds. Sonya Massey was 5'1", 110 pounds. So as this cop is barking commands at her, she is trying to do what he asked, to try to find her identification. It is then that the police direct her to a pot of boiling water she has on her stove, and she goes to attend it per their direction. But when she gets to it, she makes an offhand comment. She said to the cop, and I think it's clear now, I've listened to it a few times. She said, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." But she said it very low, and she said it not in a threatening way, not in a hostile way, not in a confrontational way, not in an aggressive way, not in any way that this cop would have been led to believe that this woman had any intention of throwing a pot of boiling water on her. He threatened her, told her that he was going to shoot her in the fucking face. She put the pot of boiling water down. She raised her hands, cowered, ducked, and he moved closer to her and shot her 3 times. I want us to take a look at the package, then we're going to come back and talk about why. Number one, why does this keep happening? Even though I think many of us already know the answer. But why it is so important that we have to inform and educate our people about not calling the police to them or on loved ones that are not white, particularly if they are Black. So let's take a look at this local package from, I believe this is channel 20 out of Springfield, Illinois. Will, let's check that out.
All right, good evening, and thank you for joining us. The former deputy accused of killing a Springfield woman pleads not guilty to murder charges. Sean Grayson appeared before a judge for the first time since his arrest. He was also ordered to stay in custody at a local county jail. We have been following this story for you since the very beginning. And this evening, we are bringing you coverage, team coverage, as we continue to learn more about what led to the death of Sonya Massey. And we start with News Channel 20's Julia Rosier, who is in the courtroom this afternoon. Julia?
Don, that's exactly right. Sean Grayson appeared in person in the courtroom today. Cameras were not allowed inside, but it was packed inside of that courtroom. Today's hearing was to decide whether or not Grayson would stay behind bars while awaiting for his trial. The prosecution argued Grayson is a risk to the community and no combinations of conditions would limit that threat. But the defense had three separate arguments, being the ties to the community as he worked for several different law enforcement agencies throughout central Illinois. He's not a flight risk because he hasn't tried to run since the incident, and his medical history. He was diagnosed with colon cancer and has an ostomy bag. Family and friends of Sonya Massey were also in the courtroom today. They even got emotional at times when the judge announced his decision to keep Grayson behind bars. The family and friends began to cheer, but the judge quickly told them to be quiet. Reporting live in Springfield, I'm Julia Rosier. Back to you.
Thanks, Julia. Grayson will be back in court on August 26th. He was indicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder, aggravated battery with a firearm, and official misconduct. The body camera video from the night of that shooting will be publicly released Monday. Be sure to stay with News Channel 20 on air and online for the latest on this story. Attorney for Sonya Massey's family releasing a statement applauding the judge for keeping Grayson in custody. Civil rights attorney Ben Crump saying in part, quote, "Today's decision by the judge to hold Deputy Sean Grayson in custody without bail marks another crucial step in the pursuit of justice for Sonya Massey's family, emphasizing the gravity of the charges and the severity of the officer's actions," end quote. Well, since her death, Sonya Massey's family has seen support from both the community and local officials. Governor J.B. Pritzker called the shooting a tragedy during a news conference today.
I feel for not just the families, the family of the victim, but also the families of Sangamon County, and then all people of color who have had to endure these kinds of circumstances and to witness them, because it affects everyone, even if it's never happened to you specifically.
All right, in the hours since former Deputy Sean Grayson was indicted on multiple charges, including murder, we have learned more about what led up to the shots being fired in her home. We continue our team coverage now with News Channel 20's Carson Gordy. Carson, what did you find out?
The documents detail the events caught on camera in the early morning of July 6th at Sonya Massey's home. Sean Grayson and another Sangamon County deputy went inside her home after Sonya called 911 about a prowler. During the incident, Grayson pulled out his service weapon and aimed at Massey. This was after Grayson allowed Massey to remove a pot of hot water off the stove. Massey put her hands in the air, said, "I'm sorry," and ducked behind a counter. Grayson then got closer to her, continued to yell to put down the pot, and fired 3 shots at her, striking her in the face once. The report added that Grayson's body camera was not activated during the incident. He turned on his body cam footage after the shooting. They got the footage from the other Sangamon County deputy that responded to the call. I'm Carson Gordy. Back to you.
Thanks, Carson. It was also noted in the charging documents Grayson made no attempt to help Massey after he shot her. The other deputy, whose name has not yet been released, did render aid to her. Tomorrow is the funeral for Sonya Massey. It will be held at Ruby Funeral Home. Visitation starts at 9 in the morning, followed by the service beginning at 10.
Okay.
And News Channel 20 will continue to follow this story and ongoing criminal case. You can find the latest up.
All right. So like I said, the body cam video has been released. I won't be showing it here because as it is for all of these incidents, it is graphic. It is heartbreaking. You realize how unnecessary it is. You realize the utter disregard for Black life that this country shows at large, but how law enforcement more specifically just outright disregards Black folks. Now, there's a number of things that I wanted to point out about this case. Firstly, let me start with the deputy here. Former deputy, as he has been fired from his department, Sean Grayson. Sean Grayson, over the past 3 years, has worked at 6 different police departments, starting back, I believe, in 2021. He, in some cases, was working at multiple departments concurrently. In other cases, it didn't seem like he had a very long tenure at some of these local police departments at some of the smaller towns in southern Illinois. That's a red flag. I would like to know more about why Sean Grayson has had so many police jobs in such a short amount of time. It sounds like he had an issue staying at one job, and that raises concerns, right? Perhaps this incident doesn't surprise some who have known Sean Grayson in some of his previous jobs as a cop. I'd like to know more about that. Also, the issue that I talk about ongoing here on this platform involves that of not calling the police. And I want to be clear. Sonya Massey is absolutely not to blame for what happened to her. She literally did nothing wrong. She if if there was ever an actual definition for this horrible phrase, perfect victim, right? I don't see what this woman did that merited her being shot in the face. Oh, and by the way, Sean Grayson, at first I was a little confused why he was charged with 3 counts of first degree murder. I was confused and concerned because I know sometimes in some of these prosecutions of police that murder people, especially black people, sometimes prosecutors have overcharged, or to think of what happened in the Freddie Gray case and other cases where the prosecutors just did a real terrible job, and it began with them trying to seek charges or seek convictions on charges that they had too high of a burden, or there was too high of a threshold for them to make legally. And I'm like, wait a minute, maybe they overcharged him by charging him with first degree murder, but now I get it. I'm like, where's the premeditation? Oh, the premeditation, Kim, since you asked yourself where the fuck the premeditation is, the premeditation. The premeditation came when he drew his weapon on her, told her specifically he was going to shoot her in the face. And then she complied with his order. He moved closer to her and shot her anyway. That is premeditated murder. That is first degree murder all fucking day. All fucking day. And I'm glad the prosecutors realized that and sought those charges. Also glad that the judge decided to keep Sean Grayson in custody. I don't give a fuck about your colostomy bag, nigga. Sit your ass in that motherfucking cell. And look how the propaganda still manages to work in favor of the accused murderous cop. His specific location is not being released. Like, they're not exactly telling you which jail he's in, right? I imagine it's for his protection. But why is he getting protection? You know who needed protection? Sonya Massey. She needed protection from a fucking psychopath that had been hired at multiple police districts and seemingly not having a good work history, reliable work history. She needed protection from that motherfucker. That's who needed protection. Also of note, interest, the second deputy whose body camera captured the entire incident. He has also not been named. He has also not been charged. And I've seen some discussions online as to whether or not he should have been charged. And I suppose some are arguing that he should have been charged because he did nothing to intervene. He did nothing to de-escalate the situation. He seemed to be stuck on stupid, right? To his credit, after Deputy Grayson, it's the victim is Sonya Massey. The perpetrator is Sean Grayson. After Sean Grayson shot Sonya Massey in the eye, the other deputy asked Grayson to go get his first aid kit, his medical kit. And Grayson replied, "Oh, there's no need for that. That was a kill shot. She's gone. She's done." He made no attempt to help this woman. The second deputy, in graphic manner, because again, this man shot this lady in the eye. He shot her through the eye. So the other deputy on the scene attempted to apply pressure to her wound, while Grayson refused to bring in any sort of first aid or render any sort of first aid. He seemed to be in no rush to try to get this woman help or try to save her life. He was 100% callous after the incident, he was telling other officers as they arrived on the scene, oh, she was fucking crazy. She was trying to throw that boiling water on us. And he looks down at the ground and sees water pooling on the ground. He's like, look, that water almost reached us. The water almost reached him. The reason these police feel as though if they perceive or even think for a second that they might get a hangnail from somebody in the public, they feel justified to open fire and shoot. This is why we cannot call the police. Black people, listen to what I'm telling you, okay? Those that are adjacent to Black people, listen to what I am telling you. It is dangerous. It is uncertain. It is unpredictable. And it doesn't happen to white people. For every one of these conservative fuckers that want to get up here and talk this shit about, well, actually, police kill more white people than they do Black people. Well, let's examine them circumstances, shall we? I would love to know the number of unarmed white folks that get murdered by police in their home. Like, if we're going to compare the thing, let's fucking compare the thing. Because miss me with the Amon Bundys of the fucking world, who, by the way, very much alive, took shots at the feds, very much alive. When we talk about white people get killed more by the police than Black people, what the fuck are we talking about? Are we talking about people that are openly posing a threat, literally, like an actual threat, like a for real bow, bok, brak, threat to the police? Are we talking about the Sonya Masseys of the world? Are we talking about the Breonna Taylors of the world? Like, who what are we talking about here? Are we talking about the Melvin Jays of the world? Like, what are the fuck are we talking about? Because I don't see the justice for white lady Karen, because white lady Karen got blamed on by the police because she made the mistake of calling the police to her house and they could not see her hands immediately, so they shot her. Like, I need to know the fucking hashtag. Like, who was the person? Who is the white? Who is it? Now, not to say it never happens. I told you guys, recent months, the specific month escapes me, but within the past 12 months, there was a white man, murdered in Northern Virginia in a rich neighborhood. He was experiencing a mental health crisis. Fairfax County Police, I believe, murdered him. And I think part of the reason his people haven't done a whole lot of public outcry about it is because they're white. This is not supposed to happen to white people. Yeah, they want justice for their son, but this is, I feel as though the reason this white family in Northern Virginia has been quiet about their loved one experiencing a mental health crisis being murdered by the police is because there's an element of shame to it. This shit happens to Black people. They can't get out there and say justice for Josh. I don't think his name was Josh, but you understand. But you know what I'm saying? They don't feel right doing that because what happened to them never happens to people like them. It usually happens to Black women or Black people in distress. And God forbid they are in a position where they feel as though they need to call the police to themselves to help, right? And though it's not been confirmed that Sonya Massey was a disabled person, I feel as though perhaps some of the clues are there, and I don't want to make too many assumptions, but she was a 36-year-old woman. She was already described as retired, which I thought was interesting. Her whole affect presented her as older, right? And as she spoke and as she conversed with the police, she seemed a bit confused. She seemed a bit out of sorts. So I don't know if she was sleepy. I don't know if she was under the influence of medication. I don't know. But I suspect there were some underlying disability things there, which in part helped to engender some of the response that she got from Sean Grayson, the murderous cop. He was yelling at her, hurry up, find your identification. Do you have it? like making these very loud and forceful and aggressive verbal commands upon her. Again, he, a police officer, towering at 6'5", 260 pounds. She, a diminutive 5'1", 100 pounds, Black woman experiencing something. At minimum, she was experiencing distress because she thought that there was someone outside of her home. And there was apparently someone that had done some damage, even though the police disbelieved her. At least that was the sentiment conveyed in part of the body cam footage that was released. So I've been thinking about this, guys. I've been thinking about, yeah, I'm like, please stop calling the police. Like, please, even if you're calling them on your side, even if you're calling them to do what we, I suppose, have all agreed is it acceptable use of the police, and that is to have them as the note takers, the record keepers, right? The providers of documents, the providers of reports. If you need an official report for something, that is a reason to call the police. But apparently, again, we have to set very specific parameters in which how the black community engages with law enforcement. And we can't treat the police as though they are there to serve us. We know that that is their stated function on paper, right? But really, they are there to keep poors, keep the marginalized communities in line. And usually, historically, there has been little to no consequence for their brutality and even murders against our communities, right? And so they're trying to, I don't know if they're trying to shake themselves out of that old habit of just killing Black folks all willy-nilly, but this one did not. But anyway, so my point, when I was thinking about don't call the police, like call, if you have to call them to give a report or some sort of administrative function, call them during the day. I know daylight is not a protector, but maybe they'd be less, inclined to murder you in broad daylight. I don't know. And I know even saying that aloud sounds so ridiculous considering the amount of people we have literally seen murdered in broad daylight, right? But more specifically, guys and ladies and GNCs out here, especially if a Black person is experiencing a mental health crisis, only call the police on them if you don't like them. Okay. If you want something bad to happen to them, by all means, call the police. But if you care about this person and you care about their well-being and ultimately you want them to live, do not call the police. And kids, please spread the fucking word. What has happened to Sonya Massey is not a one-off by any stretch of the imagination. She is the latest one. She is the latest unarmed one, right? We've seen recent instances of legal gun owners, Black folks who are able to own guns legally, be murdered in their home as well. It's not safe. We can't treat the police as though they are officer friendlies out here to us. Can't do it. Can't. And we also need to understand that even within people that are Black who get shot by police, over half, maybe even more, I want to say the number is half, but something tells me it's between 50 and 60%. Folks that get shot by the cops, at least half of them are disabled. They're either physically disabled or they have some sort of mental health issue going on, right? So disabled folks are far more likely to be murdered by police, right? So if Black is a big baseline for being murdered by police, you throw disabled on top of that, those chances go up exponentially. Okay. And we can't be casual with 911. Like if you're going to call 911, please be specific. Don't ask for the cops. They might show up anyway. But if you ask for an ambulance, if you ask for the mental health person, if you specifically say, please do not send police to my house, the person in question who is experiencing the crisis is aggravated by the presence of police, please do not send police to the house. Send EMTs, send the fire department, right? Don't send the police. Because out of the EMTs and out of the fire department, those are non-gun carrying members of our public safety response teams, right? Don't call the ones that can actually murder people if the goal is to help somebody. So, as you guys also saw, Sonya Massey's family is being represented by attorney Ben Crump. You know, we all have our opinions about Crump, and it's brought attention to this, but I want to hear what Kamala has to say. I want to hear what Kamala has to say about this, right? Because if we are in this moment in America where we are perhaps on the precipice of possibly electing the first woman of color, I guess she identifies as black. She identifies as black, right? If we're on the precipice of electing the first black woman president, I would think a story like this or an incident like this would be something that Kamala would have a comment about, right? And she's probably going to throw some sort of rigmarole on it. Yeah, it's a tragedy. And, if we could get the George Floyd Justice and Policing bill passed, then that would solve all of these problems. Absolutely not. Don't let her tell you that. Because when these Democrats, especially, but when public officials generally are responding to police violence in the community and they say, oh, the police need more training. Well, the questions need to be reciprocated back to these elected officials. Well, clearly this was the training that they fucking received, right? Like this was the training that this motherfucker Sean Grayson got from 6 goddamn police departments. This is the training he received. This is the training, right? So when you talk about receiving better training, what we talk about? Making them better shots? Miseducating or not educating them at all? Or undervaluing learning and knowing constitutional rights and civil rights? Getting these cops to understand that's just because somebody, and to be clear, this woman, Sonya Massey, did not threaten to throw this pot of water on this motherfucker, but part of me wish that she had. Because at the end of the day, if she was threatening, which she was not, but let's say hypothetically she had been, that cop could have stepped back. He could have retreated. Okay. You could have ran away. You could have walked out the door. Like at one point during the body cam, this motherfucker says, ain't no fucking way I was going to take a pot of hot boiling water to the fucking face. Well, when did you think you were ever in danger of that happening? And if you did legitimately think you were in danger of that happening, why didn't you just leave? Why didn't you fucking turn around? Your first reaction is to pull out a gun and shoot this woman with her hands up? And again, the reason, even though I did not hear on the body cam footage Sean Grayson make any racially disparaging remarks, he was making remarks that are very common pejoratives against black women. Oh, she was crazy. Oh, she was this. He didn't say anything about her being black specifically, but the way he was able so callously to not render her any aid, to shoot her basically unprovoked, just goes to show you the deep anti-blackness that is embedded in not all white people, but a good amount in this country, and the amount of anti-blackness that is embedded and just inhumanity shown towards black people. That is how the police are trained. And Democrats and Republicans alike want these cops to get more of this fucking training. And show me the difference between Kamala and Donald Trump when it comes to incidents like this. Because the Democrats will give lip service about something like the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which again lacked all teeth. It did nothing to address qualified immunity to start, right? So it was going to be a toothless piece of legislation anyway, relatively speaking, and they couldn't even get that through, right? So show me on that debate stage between Kamala and Donald Trump, where do these candidates stand on this fucking issue, on addressing this issue, on saying aloud why something like this could happen to Sonya Massey and not scores of other white folks who in a comparable situation would have been able to escape alive with their life. What happened to her does not happen to white folks by and large. So this is why we have to take the system down, Shorty. There is no like if we go, please let us start with policing as an institution. There's no redeeming quality about it. The best part about the cops is that again, they provide the fucking reports. They serve an administrative function. If they'd have give this lady her report and been on their fucking way, she'd have been alive right now.